Okay, we want to respect your time. It's a lovely spring day, and so we're going to want to get you out of here so that you can enjoy a beautiful Sunday spring afternoon. But we've got some things we want to work our way through, and I know we've got folks who are still over finishing up dessert, having a last cupcake. So they'll be. I'm sure folks are going to be kind of wandering their way in here. We want to greet those who are tuned in online, and you can let folks know if they missed this meeting for whatever reason. We will have this archived online so folks can go back and review what we're going to be talking about here this afternoon. So with that, I'm going to dive right in. I'm sitting here looking at the fact that our room's about half full. I know there's another half back there, but I'm thinking, well, hey, it's just like starting the worship service. Okay, all right, yeah, little joke there. So we want to go through, some of you are aware that every year in January, the elders and their wives go off for a couple of days of time of, there's some fellowship, there's some instruction that goes on, there's some praying, and there's just some strategic thinking about where does God have us as a church. We review the work of God over the past year or even beyond that and see evidence of God's grace in the life of the church, and then we start to think, what priorities do we need to be addressing as we move forward? So we did that in late January this year, and I wanted to report back to you on the things that, as we gathered, we said these are things that we think need attention and focus. Now, this is just to say beyond what we're kind of normally doing week in and week out, these are some of the things that we think need some special attention. So the first thing I want to get to is this. We've had lots of conversations. John Dietrich and I have had lots of conversations around the mission of the church. And I don't know if you've ever looked at church mission statements before, but you can kind of jump from church to church to church, and most churches are finding fresh ways to try to say the same thing that the other church is saying. Because if the church is what the church ought to be, we ought to all be on the same mission. So it should be that the mission of the church down the street and our mission aren't that different. But here's kind of some language that I've started using to describe when I think about what we want to be as a church. It's a desire that Redeemer would be a vibrant community of people who want to know, love, serve, trust, and obey Jesus, and want to do it more today than we did yesterday, and more tomorrow than we did today. Those 5 words, I could make a case for the fact that trust really fits under love and know, and that obey fits under serve. But honestly, I thought I need to remember those 5 words myself. Know, love, I got to look at it, serve, trust, and obey. And trust and obey, I just like the song, so I threw that in at the end too, right? Know, love, serve, trust, obey. If you really look at what is it that we're all about, as individuals, we want this to be true about us. And as a church community, we want to be a church that's known as people who know Jesus, we love Jesus, we serve Jesus, we trust Jesus, we obey Jesus. And we want to do it more today than we did yesterday, and we want to do it more tomorrow than we did today. Now, I'm not saying this is our new mission statement. I'm just saying as I put it together in my own mind, this really defines why we get together, why we do what we do. We believe that this happens in community in a way that it can't happen individually. So for a person to say, well, I want this to be true about me, but I don't need a church to do that, you're really missing out on the means of grace that God has given us in one another to help make this true in our lives, okay? So we talked last year about wanting to be people who love God and love others. We want to love God with clear heads and hot hearts and strong arms and beautiful feet. And we want to love others at home, in our church and in our community and in our world. That's not any different than what we talked about, but it's another way of looking at what we do as a church and who we are, what our mission is in all that we're trying to do, okay? Why Redeemer? Because, there we go. These are the things you've told us as we've talked about the church. We've said, what is it that why have you made Redeemer your church home? And the things that you've said are clear gospel-centered preaching, a balance of grace and truth in our ministry, people who really care about one another. These tend to be things that people identify. Not a lot of programs is a high value, that we're not heavy on program stuff. That we are organic and not glitzy. It's low cost, which means money for missions, and no staff, which means people have to use their gifts and pitch in. These are things that we think represent values that all of us have, and values that we want to see go forward with this church. Now, I'll just say, related to no staff, there gets to be a point where you got to have some help. So, but we don't want to be top heavy with staff, because really, and I've said this to a lot of people, if we got a staff person at Redeemer and we said, and all of a sudden people started saying, "Phew, we got a staff guy, so I don't need to do this stuff anymore." No, we'll fire the staff guy and make you keep doing stuff, right? Because we want all of us engaged. But there are some things that we just can't get to that we wish we could get to, and our schedules are so full that we may need a staff person at some point in the future. And in fact, related to that, we said as we go forward in this year, one of the things we want to emphasize is how can we do a better job as a church of helping people move from first-time visitor to part of the family. I think folks who come and visit at Redeemer typically feel welcomed. I think you guys do a great job of speaking to folks and caring about people who are visiting and engaging and embracing. We think there's a little gap between there and I'm a part of the Redeemer family. We just want to make sure nobody gets lost in that gap and that everybody gets guided where they need to go. So that's something we want to spend some time focused on. Here's the second thing: figure out how to improve our online and digital presence in the city. You can pretty much be sure that everybody who comes to visit us has been to our website before they ever step foot in the door. And they've already determined things about who we are based on our website. And we've got a Facebook page that has nothing on it and that nobody maintains. But we've got a Facebook page, right? There are lots of things we could be doing in terms of Facebook and Twitter and social media, lots of things we could be doing to make the website even more robust than it is. That's one of the things we'd like to be getting more attention to. We want to investigate other churches to see what they're doing that are effective in terms of evangelism and discipleship, because we want that to be a key focus, and we want to say, okay, we think we're doing okay, but we think in the area of evangelism in particular, we can grow significantly there. And in the we want to continue to improve our small group men's and women's ministries. These have become vital and important parts of what we do as a church, and we just want to see them continue to thrive and continue to do well. And then tied to that is this idea: we want to pray about a first hire. Now, when I say pray about a first hire, that doesn't mean that as a 2015 priority, we are going to hire somebody. We might not. We're just trying to seek the Lord's leading in terms of when is the right time and who would the right person be and when can we afford to do that. So we did draw up this. We asked the question of if we were going to have a job description for a new hire, what would we want somebody to do? Well, one of the things is assume leadership of student ministries. This is an area where Jim and Terry McMurray have served faithfully and continue to serve faithfully and have done it for 5, 6, how many years? A bunch, right? But we need to broaden that, and we need somebody who can lend a hand in that area. Now, it may be a volunteer who takes that over, and that we'd love for that to be the case, for somebody to own that in a post-Jim and Terry environment, or in not a post-Jim and Terry, but one where they, I'm not wishing anything for them, but in an environment where they could step back and play a supporting role in a transitional environment. That's something that we want to look at. Somebody who could offer administration of the children's ministry. Again, we're pitching in to make that happen, but we got some gaps in that area. One of the gaps that we've got in that area, Super Sunday has been very effective. Ruthie comes up to me every Sunday wanting to know if it's Super Sunday this week, right? She loves Super Sunday. Lots of kids love it. And the couples who are doing that, I'm very grateful for the Cooks and the Morlages and the Rosenbaums and the Neffs for their involvement that they've given in that area. And it's made it really workable to do it every other week. Then I think about, okay, what about our 9 through 12-year-olds who right now don't have anything designated for them. Well, that's something we'd like to get to. That's an area where we need some hands on deck. Might be volunteer, but it might be a staff person too. Oversight of the facility. If we're going to build a facility, whether it's this facility or another facility, somebody who gives scheduling or administrative oversight, make sure that that the building is operating. Somebody other than me who gets the call when the alarm company has, when something trips the burglar alarm. Things like that we'd look for somebody to help with. Oversee a master calendar for the church. Be the liaison with Stepp and McDermott or with David O'Dodd and McDermott if we decide to do something at David O'Dodd Elementary. Keep the website updated, the stuff we were talking about. Give leadership to some of that assimilation effort. That's the getting you from first time in the door to a part of the family. Somebody who could give leadership to help that process happen. Assist the small group leaders. So that's a lot of stuff, right? And I'm not saying that somebody would do all of that, but somebody who could get together with the elders and with the deacons, and we can look at this list and we can assign that person to start to tackle some of these things and to engage with volunteers on these things and to help us function more smoothly in some of these areas. We're looking for somebody who would be a mix of task and relationship in their personality, somebody who would be a delegator and a motivator of people, somebody who could document and communicate what they do, and somebody who's humble, accountable, and teachable. So, again, that's something we're praying about and something we're thinking about, and it's one of those areas that as we continue through the year, we're just seeking the Lord. When is the right time? Who's the right person? And when can we afford to do this? Okay? And then the last priority that we're going to get to is the priority of moving forward with next steps in pursuing a permanent facility. And that involves reviewing our current financial status and exploring how much of a building we can afford to build. I want to take just a minute, and I'm going to kind of go back here and just, as we look at this list and the list to come, any questions about these as priorities or anything that you look at and go, why are we doing that, or what about this? Any quick questions? Yes, Eric.
It kind of goes to the purpose of the church, and in my opinion, churches are kind of divided in this day and age. Some churches think it's all about outreach, and some churches think it's much more about building the body,
right,
and then the body does the outreach. What's our overlying philosophy?
Yeah, the question for those of you who are watching online, Eric asked the question about some churches think that your focus should be on outreach. Some churches think your focus should be on building up the body. Where are we in that mix? And I would say where we are in practice today is more about building up the body. We think there's an evangelism oversight there. Where should we be? Smack in the middle. I think that that's one of those balance beams where you need to be actively involved in mission in your community and in your world and in your workplace. You need to be sharing your faith with folks. You need to be bringing folks to church. We want to be all about that. So the evangelism side and the discipleship side I see as both priorities. You can't really say one is more important than the other. I think in practice, churches tend to lean one direction or another. And I think if you're aware of which way you lean, then you know you got to focus on the area where you're weak. I said at one point when we were raising our kids, I said something to Mary Ann about not wanting to be harsh or angry in a way that would push our kids into rebellion. And she said, I don't think you'll get there. She said, I think you can go to the edges of your harshness and you'll still be okay, right? And she was just acknowledging that I tended to be more compassionate-hearted and I tended to be more permissive as a parent. She tended to be more authoritarian as a parent. And so it was a great balancing act. And I would say we tend to be more discipleship-focused and we need to press into the evangelistic side of us and make that a priority. That's part of what I'd say. Any other questions? Yeah, Chris.
So, three out of the four would typically be solved by programs.
Yes.
And I find that interesting.
Yeah. So 3 out of the 4, he says, would typically be solved by programs, and we're trying to figure out how we do it without having programs in place. Because we're trying to keep low threshold on programs and trying to, We're trying to make Sunday morning and your small group the two primary things that you engage with. Men's, women's ministry would be kind of those optional things for folks who want to do it. But we honestly don't want to add a fourth program and a fifth program on top of those kinds of things. So we're trying to figure out, are there ways to do that that don't have a program, that are more relational, more organic in what we're doing? That's our thinking. Anything else? Okay, if there's nothing else, in the interest of time, we're going to switch over, because I was here, review of our current financial status, and then how much building can we afford to build. I'm going to turn things over to Tim Friesen, and Tim is going to give you an update on where we are financially and what's going on. So you need this to work your way through? Okay, she'll do it for you.
Okay. Megan, you can go ahead and get started there. One of the things we wanted to do, can you turn the mic down just a bit?
Can you speak up?
Yes,
You're
it sounds like it's awfully alive.
It's because you're standing in front of the speaker.
Yeah, let's get over here. It's like my monitor is killing me. Okay, what we wanted to do first is give you a view of where the church is financially, the health of the church, so to speak, financially. And before I get into the detail of that, let me just say a couple things. What we've tried to do here is we've got about 4 or 5 slides. This won't take long, but what I wanted to do is give you a good oversight of where we are. Clean, neat overview, right? There's a lot of detail behind this, and there are some in the audience that are more detail-oriented than others. So if you have questions and you see something go, that seems like an anomaly, or that doesn't seem like the best, it doesn't add up or something, feel free to see me and we can take you through the detail that makes this up. Second thing I want to say is we're thankful. I've served in a financial position for many years in different environments, and I've worked in both situations where things are really tight and difficult, and then I've worked here where we're just good financially, and I'm thankful. I'm not bragging about it. I just tell you I'm thankful to God, and it's a pleasure to work in that role, especially when things are positive. There's a few people I'd like to acknowledge and helped us remain on track often. Laura White is our current treasurer and has served in that role for the last couple of years. Laura has an accounting degree, works for an accounting firm, does all kinds of taxes, is used to confidentiality issues. So Laura is the only one that sees everything that everybody gives and sends out the statements, and the rest of us, others of us don't. Several of us are involved in counting the money, but nobody counts it every single time. So there's a gap in the knowledge that the rest of us have, and we think that's appropriate. But Laura understands the importance of confidentiality. And then I want to commend the deacons. Keith Cook, Chad Donnelly, and Don Parrish have served in huge roles to help us. Okay, cash in the bank, value of the land, that's what we paid for the land. The land, perhaps may be worth more than that now, but we don't want to assume that. And then the total assets right around $800,000. Next slide. Wanted to give you just a brief summary of where what our budget was last year and how we did against that budget, and give you an idea of comparing our missions priority to the operating budget, and let you know that missions is a big priority with us, and we want it to continue to be as we move forward. Third line item there are new property expenses. You'll notice nothing's budgeted. Actually, last year, the first time we saw the land that we subsequently closed on in July was December 26th, the day after Christmas. And fortunately, it was a day where all 7 of the elders could get together. We went over the land and walked it, and we're just astounded with the property, and we're really encouraged. And anyhow, 7 months, I guess, about 7 months later, we closed on it. So that was, the budget had already been set, so that wasn't something that we could foresee at that point. So it was an unbudgeted item, but still fit within the total of our budget. And then ministry expenses. and you'll see that we're just slightly under budget in terms of our expenses. 2015 missions budget. Okay, I just wanted to give you a handle on that in terms of you saying we're spending a fair bit on missions. Where is that going? Foreign missions represents about 80,000 of that 90,000, with 10,000 local outreach. One thing that doesn't show on here is we also have allocated this year some money to IFO. That's not listed on the, wasn't originally budgeted, but we have allocated some money there.
What's IFO?
International Friendship Outreach, I think. Okay. And then let's move to the 4-year summary. What I wanted to do is provide to you how have we done over the last 4 years. And the obvious question is, can we or can we not afford a new building, right? And fortunately, the lender is careful to evaluate that as well. So if we're a little over enthusiastic, we'll be brought into alignment there. But I wanted you to get a comfort level in terms of where is the giving over time, how have the expenses done over time, and what's the difference, and can we in fact afford this? A couple of those of you who are more technical than others, you'll notice a couple of things that kind of stand out as anomalies. If you look at the giving under 2014, you'll see quite a jump. We had a large gift given late in the year, where half of that large gift was allocated to the building program, and half of it was allocated to a first hire, whenever that occurs. So it was a large gift that pushed the giving up significantly. And you'll notice a dip in the expenses in 2013. I honestly don't know exactly why that is, but again, I can get the details to support that. So Tom may have something he wants to offer, but I would just have to look at the detail. I'm not sure exactly why the dip. So then the difference by year. Next slide. 4-year averages. So what I asked Laura to do in preparing this deck, as I said, I want the people to understand what the averages are over the last 4 years. Average monthly giving is about $11,000 ahead of actual expenses. Those actual expenses include the $90,000 towards emissions. So that becomes then the key in terms of how do we pay for a loan. Building project, let's look to new project costs. Estimated total project cost for what we'll show you in terms of a handout shortly is about $2 million, and I want to allow some room for that coming in a little higher than our initial estimate. So let's just say it's $2 to $2.2 million, and we could. But at $2 million, what we believe we need to have is a cash down payment of about $600,000 to get a loan amount of $1.4 million. With an estimated payment being in the $9,000 to $11,000 per month range. That's going to vary based on how long we choose to amortize the loan. It'll also vary based on what kind of loan percentage, loan interest rate we get. But we believe it'll be in that range. Now let's go back to the first slide. You'll notice on the first slide we have $400,000 in cash, and I'm talking about a $600,000 down payment. So obviously we intend to raise some more funds for that. In addition to that, we would probably need to add about $120,000 in addition to that for architecture fees, things like that. So overall, I believe that we need to look at raising about another $300,000 for this project to come in at about 1.4 on a $2 million project. So we may need to raise more, if it ends up being 2.2 million. But that'll give you an idea of ranges and where we are. Now, Megan, let's go to the slide that shows the 4-year average. Let's go back to that one. We talked about a $9,000 to $11,000 payment, most likely, and we see that we have right at $11,000, but that's cutting it real tight. One of the things that's not in the numbers is currently we pay $3,500 a month rent. Obviously, when they're in the new facility, that $3,500 adds to the $11,000 that's available. So we'll have a little over $14,000, close to $15,000, presumably, right, that would be available for us. That gives us some cushion. Gives us some cushion because there's going to be some expenses in the facility in terms of insurance, maintenance, things like that, higher utility costs. May want to begin to think about a new hire and what we have available there. So a lot of variables there, but I want you to see that the numbers work in terms of coming up with a loan in that amount. That is it. That's all I've prepared, but I did want to open it up. Are there questions, concerns? Yes, Eric.
Two questions. Do we have policy or philosophy for a minimum cash on hand, like $100,000 minimum or something like that, which might impact part of that discussion? That's one question. The second question is, of the average monthly giving, do we know what percentage of that is members and what is non-members?
The two questions for those who are watching at home. First question is, do we have a policy in terms of how much cash on hand we should have to operate safely? And the second is, do we know the difference between members and non-members in terms of the giving?
We don't have a minimum policy in terms of cash on hand. We just try to use good judgment there. I would say this. For one thing, right now we're showing just slightly over $400,000 in cash. We probably would want to have about $50,000 in operating cash. In other words, let's say we need to make a down payment of $600,000. We'd have to probably raise about $250,000 because we'd want to keep, before we'd get rid of the $600,000, we'd still want to keep about $50,000 in it. And that's a guess, Eric, but I think we've talked about a little bit of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in that range. We don't have a specific written down policy.
I'll just say that $50,000 would be about 5 months operating, apart from what we're given on missions. So we typically give the missions at the beginning of the year, and then your monthly operating is around 10 or 11 a month.
With regard to breakdown of member by non-member, we don't have statistics on that. We could certainly ask Laura to put that together and come up with something. In general, I would say there's what we do track is number of giving units, and for a church our size, what you like to see is a pretty nice, quite a few giving units, and we do have, and I don't have the number memorized, but we track that actually weekly in terms of number of checks, number of giving units, and it's a decent sized number, so we're encouraged by that. With regard to the actual numbers and what kind of confluence you have there with 10 or 11 or 20 people, I don't know for sure, but it's fairly broad in terms of the number of giving units. Does that answer your questions? Okay. Anybody else? Glenn.
On the numbers that you were saying as far as the amount of payment each month, what kind of term of the loan are we talking about? Like 30 year, 15?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, the question is from the $9,000 to $11,000 per month, what kind of term is that? And it varies, obviously, based on me, changing it from $9,000 to $11,000. But if memory serves me right, with an interest rate of about 5%, and I believe a 20-year amortization schedule, I think it comes real close to $9,000 a month at $1.4 million. I've got to check that for sure. Let me just tell you what is traditional for what typically happens in churches. And the reason I know this is Tom and I met with one of the senior executives of a pretty good sized bank, actually headquartered out of Little Rock. One of the things he brought forward, he said churches tend to operate fairly conservatively. And what typically happens is they'll amortize it over a long period of time, but they tend to pay it off in a much shorter period of time. And that's our intent. Our intent is much like when you buy a house, you might look at, we want to put it on 30 years, but we really want to pay it off in 15. And so we'll write a check for the interest payment or the minimum payment monthly, and then, well, God blessed us this month with another $100. Write another check, go straight toward principal. We intend to do that here as well, and while I can't promise that, I would be surprised if we went over 15 years, but we'll probably look at a longer term amortization schedule so that we don't squeeze ourselves if tough times come. So I think it's around 9,000 at 5% in about 20 years. Yeah, Randall.
Is the land going to be wrapped in that $2 million, or is that a separate amount, or how's that work?
The question is, will the land be wrapped into the $2 million? And the answer is the $2 million or the $2.2 million, in that range would be the building cost itself. The land is right around just under $400,000, but the land is paid for. So if you go back to the first slide, cash in bank and value of land, those are paid for assets. That's the other thing I want you to understand. We have no debt. We have no financial obligations. We have a clean slate. We have $800,000, roughly, almost equally, between cash on hand and land, the value of that land. And just to see it from a banker's perspective, it's a pretty nice deal for them. You've basically got a $2.4 million project because the land essentially becomes theirs. Until it's paid for, right? They're not gonna give you a loan for the building if they don't own the land as well. So that becomes, and that's just typical, right? So you've got $2.4 million project. They have $400,000 plus another $600,000. So you got a building project of $2 million, but the banker has $1 million. So it is a good deal for the bank and a good deal for us to negotiate a pretty good interest rate. Are you following that? Does that make sense? Okay. Somebody else? Don?
Well, Tim, out of the total investment for construction of this property, what money planning is allocated toward property improvement, streets, access, or any security fencing, if there is any, parking lots? Is all that rolled into that figure, or would that have to be landscaping, excavating?
Yeah. The question is, besides audio visual, parking, landscaping, the beautiful thing is the lot itself is it's not going to need a huge amount. We are going to keep that big oak tree, those of you who've been there. And you'll love the plan when you see it in terms of the use of that oak tree and the drop-off area. I think you'll like that. But yes, we intend for that 2 to 2.2 to be all in.
Let me just say that what's not in there is we do include furnishing for the kitchen, so the freezers and all of that. But what's not in there is furniture.
Yeah.
So we haven't got sofas. We'll take these chairs, we move them over there. We're going to you remember when you moved from your first apartment to your first home and you had a lot of empty space? That's what we'll have for a while, and we'll buy furniture along the way.
Yeah. Curtis.
You mentioned a lot. I don't recall it having been mentioned, but for the sake of those who may not have known, it's not a lot, it's 20 acres.
Yeah, it's a large lot. Actually, it's 20 acres, as Curtis has pointed out, off David O'Dodd. Many of you were there for the fall get-together, the bonfire and the good time there. Hopefully, we'll schedule something here in spring where we can get out there again. But even if we don't, I encourage you to stop by and walk it. It's 20 acres.
Well, let me do this. Let me show you what it is we're talking about, unless you've got other financial-related questions. Yes, Eric?
One more. Do we have an estimate of what property taxes, annual property taxes?
We're exempt.
The annual, right now, I think we have to pay about $250 a year for the land. And once we start a building project and apply, we should be exempt from those taxes because we're a 501c3 charitable church.
Anything else on the finances? You can ask Tim questions if you got specifics afterwards. Let me introduce to you Kali Burrow. Kali works with our architectural firm, Fennell Purifoy, and they've been at work with us in laying out a first look at what we might want to build. Kali's right up here. Everybody say hi, Kali. Hi, Kali. All right. And Kali and Holly Admire have done a great job. Yeah, just sit up here. And I'm going to do the presentation, and I'll defer any hard questions to him, okay? So that's how this works. But we've got this, we're going to turn off the lights. Okay. Here's the existing site. This is I-430, David O. Dodd here. This is the Water's Edge subdivision. So you'll see here that we're talking about 20 acres, mostly wooded, at the back of the property. Highway 430 to the west, that's our boundary. David O. Dodd on the south is the boundary. And then the Water's Edge subdivision is the east boundary. And woods are the northern boundary, okay? Now the new building area, as you'll see, is right here at the front of the property. There's our big tree that everybody's saying, please don't do anything to the tree. So it's right there in the middle, and we're looking at the building area being right in here around the tree, okay? So here's what it looks like from the road if you were to drive down there. And by the way, the best way to get there, if you haven't been by the property, is you go down to the Rave Theater, and you keep going past the Rave to the stoplight where the big red gas station is, and you turn left there. You'll go past J.A. Fair High School that's on your left. You go about another mile down the road, you go across 430, and our lot, or our 20 acres, is the first property that's to the left. You'll see that gate right there. Tim mentioned that these 20 acres we bought this past year for $400,000 roughly. I'll just tell you that a mile up the street, near J.A. Fair High School, 40 acres just sold in that space for $3.7 million. Okay? Twice as much land, a lot more money. Now, it's a mile away. It's closer to Colonel Glenn. It's more in a commercial environment. But this is a part of Little Rock that is starting to expand and develop. Okay? Here's another picture that shows, there's our tree. See, keep existing tree. Nice flat site here behind the tree. And there's a path that goes to the back of the lot. If you were out there, you remember some of you walked to the back of the lot using that pathway. There's the path that goes to the back of the lot. There's the tree, and there's the building site. Okay? Now this shows our property lines. You see we've got this cutout here. Somebody else owns that property, and there's easement possibility here if they ever wanted to build an on and off to 430. There's the opportunity to do that without invading our land. There's actually quite a drop-off here in terms of elevation. If they ever did build on and off ramps there, our property value would go up significantly, right? But we don't know that they're going to do that. This shows where what we're talking about building fits on the land, okay? 20 acres, we're using maybe 5 of them. Okay? So we zoom in here. Here would be a driveway that splits off to a parking lot. I asked them about these peach-colored cars, where you can buy those. They're in style now. So here's that. This is the main entranceway into what would be the overview of the building. So let's zoom in here. You would come up the main. This is a two-way the street. You'd come up here. You'd be able to pull around here into a covered drop-off spot to drop folks off to go into the entrance of the church. This would be the accessible, handicapped accessible parking, guest parking, and then senior pastor parking would be right there. Over here is the main parking lot, 101 parking spaces. If you take this and add it together, it's 101 parking spaces. We currently are utilizing, what is it, Tom, 80 spaces on a Sunday morning?
About 60.
It's about 60 spaces when we've got 160 people here. So that gives us our ratio in terms of 100 parking spots. We're figuring that a parking spot is bringing 2.5 people to church every Sunday. So if you've got 100 spots, you're going to be able to have 250 to 300 people coming in to that area. Let's see. Yeah, there's the existing tree. Keep existing tree. And then again, that shows where it sits, bordering the the subdivision. We're not planning fencing. Most of these properties have a back fence on their property. And we do have a tree barrier between the neighborhood so that we don't feel like it needs fencing. So let's zoom in here and see what the floor plan would look like. Okay, here is the worship center. This is the lobby, kitchen, bathrooms, what we call the living room. We'll go through that in just a minute. Here's the classroom wing with a suite for nursery, and then classrooms for children. Again, we'll look at that as we go. Roughly 14,000 square feet, which is about double what we have here. Okay? So you would come into the covered drop-off, you'd come into the vestibule, which would have, you see here it's got airlock area here in the vestibule. So these are the doors that open to the outside. These are the doors that open to the inside. So you've got a little bit of a breeze shelter in there as you come in to the area. This is the main restroom area. And you can see here that it's got 5 for women and it's got 3 + 2 for men. Okay, and it's one of these, like at the airport, where there's not going to be a door there, but you just come in and go the direction you need to go. Okay. Oh, I should go back. Kitchen area. We have a prayer room located here. This is going to be kind of a combination prayer and nursing room for nursing moms during the worship service. It'll be set up with a video screen and audio so that folks who need to pop out to do nursing can still watch the service going on while they're in the nursing room. Be available as a prayer room before, after the service. 91 square feet is about a 9 by 10 room, about the size of a small bedroom that you'd be in. Bigger, certainly, than what we've got as a prayer room back here right now. Here's a kitchen island in the middle, kitchen storage that's right here, and a coffee service off of the kitchen. This will not be a full commercial kitchen. We will not have a grill or a range hood put in there. Too expensive to put that in. We will have ovens, we'll have heating racks, and we'll have refrigeration. And but we're not going to be grilling burgers back there. We're not going to have open burners and not going to have cooktops. Okay. This area that we call the living room is it's not a full fellowship hall, but we really envision this as a room that if your small group needed a place to meet as a small group, you can come use the living room. If you wanted to use this for a couple of small groups getting together and you didn't have a living room big enough, this is a 900 square foot. That's the size of, there are apartments smaller than that, right? So it's a pretty good size area, and you see we've got it kind of set up in these 4 areas. Think of a Starbucks on times 6, basically, and you've got that kind of seating where people can sit around and can visit. And all of this can be modular, can be moved around, so it can be very flexible space. And you'll see more of that in a minute. We've got, this is a kiosk here and here for folks as they come through the entranceway. It's kind of our front, like our front desk out here. And then this is these are doorways that lead out onto our outdoor patio. You can see there's a fireplace at the end of this. Okay. Let me move into the worship center. And this shows, first of all, current setup with seating for 340 people. Okay. We are currently running. Anybody know what we had this morning?
76 in here.
Had 176 in here this morning. We're running in about that place. Easter Sunday, 203 in here. That's your big Sunday. We've dropped down in the past year. We've had some Sundays that were in the 130, but typically week in and week out, we're between 150 and 170, which is considered full for a room of this size. If you're typically not going to have people coming every week if they can't get a seat, or if there's just a 1 seat here and a 1 seat there. 340 seats, and then there are additional 80 seats. Let me go back, and you see we've got set up around here some table and chairs. And we don't know that we'll have those set up all the time, but we might put those in the back of the room to make it easy. If we wanted to have a fellowship meal after church, we've got a jump start. We'd actually be taking down a lot of these chairs and putting more tables and chairs around in the worship center. But that's kind of backspace seating that make it a little more flexible of a space. So those worship seats, then additional 80 seats for dining around the back there. We're planning to have 4 communion tables. I don't know if that's going to be 4 in the main area. Here's one of the things that we'd really like to do. I'd like to, as we're serving communion every week, have an area where if folks wanted to go and be prayed for during communion, like we do on Good Friday, where you can kind of go and just have somebody serve the Lord's Supper to you, but also pray with you about a burden, something on your heart. We thought maybe these back communion tables might serve that function, or we may set up communion in the living room every Sunday. And if you want prayer, rather than coming through the main lines, there'll be somebody in the living room who can meet with you there and pray with you and serve you the Lord's Supper over there. That's part of what we're trying to get to in terms of how we handle the Lord's Supper in this way. A lot of you said, keep the worship team off the stage, okay? Don't let this go to Michael Friesen's head, is what many of you said. So we're actually looking at a raised platform that would be to the right side of the main stage. It's about double our current size, and it's where the band would be set up, and it would be not as high as the main stage, but not at floor level. So it'd be a little bit off the floor, not as high as the main stage, and that's where the worship team would lead from, okay? Here's the main stage area. We're imagining a recessed baptistry in the stage. So this actually is a 3-panel cover that you can take off, and underneath it would be your baptistry. And when you're doing a baptism, you just take the covers off of that area, and we'd have one of our video cameras set up so that we could show everybody on the screens what's going on more closely on the stage, and we'd do baptisms right underneath there on the main platform. Okay, and then there's a storage area that's on the other side of the main worship hall. So again, that's our main worship center. We're in some conversation about whether the audio and video rooms will be split or whether they'll be together on one side or the other. Some of this is still wet cement, but this is just where we are today with it. Okay, and then let me move over here to the class. Yeah. Is that a screen when it says com? Yeah. Communion. That's communion table, communion table, communion table, communion table. We're looking at screens. We're talking to our audiovisual people about a screen on this side, a screen on this side, and this might actually be a stage screen. That would be something that I can point to up on the platform as I'm teaching. Okay.
What is that white item on the stage?
This item right here, we're planning to have a large cross on the platform. That would be a wooden cross that we'll have there as a permanent fixture, not something that's back against the wall, but something that's out on the stage that is a part of it could be moved around, but it'll stay there most of the time. Okay? Things that we'd want to do if we were expanding it out and doing something with 9 through 11-year-olds, we'd have plenty of classroom space available in there. This would be the office suite with the reception area, an office for a church administrator to use that would give us the kind of the central hub for the building. And then this is the nursery area. We've got wider hallways here in the nursery. This is a door that goes to the outside, to the parking lot out in this area. You can see we have a check-in area being built here. So as you're checking your kids into nursery or into the classroom wing, there'd be a check-in area here, doors here for the different areas in the nursery. So you've got nursery, toddler 1, toddler 2, preschool, different areas, cribs in here, changing tables here, toilets between toddler 1 and toddler 2 for them to use. Preschoolers are still in diapers, so you'd have a changing table there as well. And this would be a nice nursery suite that's built in there. Yeah, sinks in every room. Sink, 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 sink.
Bob?
Yes.
What about on that exit down the hallway from where the toddlers are? How protected would that be?
This exit right here? This one right here?
Yes.
You're asking how protected would it be?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're looking at, do we put a security bar up there so that it's not available from the outside and force everybody to go through the front door to get there? Or do you make that open? How do you do? I mean, that's still open. What that security level will look like is still an open deal. Okay? I mean, it's possible that this will be closed with an alarm bar on it, and it's just there for an emergency exit, or it's possible that it'll be an entrance. We're still trying to look at how we pull all of that together. Ooh. So here's what it would look like coming in the front door to the church. This is Diana here. I don't know who that is, right? But this is what you'd look like as you come through the front entranceway. And this is what we imagine the living room would look like.
I want to say one thing. That is Bob on the screen.
There you go. Nice job on that. So we can do this for overflow if we would ever need to do it for overflow. But honestly, this is also a place where your small group can get together and watch a video, or where we can come and we'll just have that area available. So this is what the living room area would look like.
Bob mentioned the doors.
Oh, the barn doors, yes. Yeah, come back here and you can see this door and this door. These work like barn doors, so you'd slide them together to close it off, slide them open.
Main cheese.
Yeah, it's like what they've got at the Main Cheese, right? Isn't that what you got, Randall? It is. Yeah, same kind of thing. Yeah.
The floor composite made of?
We're not sure. Okay, we're still talking with our acoustic people about whether the floor is going to be tile or wood or what it's going to be. Okay. This shows if you're in the Northlux looking toward the worship center. So this would be the doors into the worship center. Here's the little cutout area where the volunteers can do the name tags and welcome you to the church. Okay. That's Paul McBride right there. We put him in there. That's right. Okay. This is what it would look like in the worship center from the back. We would not force the worship band all the way into the corner like that, unless they've been really bad. But Chris, you were asking about video monitors. So here's one there, here's one there, and here would be an on-platform video monitor that could be used. There's the cross we were talking about there. So this is kind of what it would look like. This is what we're imagining in terms of interior design. You've heard us talk about wanting a rustic look or wanting it to have more of that earth tones, wood, metal. I've always pointed people to this cross here and said, wood, stone, I want it to look like that, the whole thing. So it's the Cindy Vandenberg look. She's in charge of all of that, right? Yeah, so we've got a window here. We've got window here. You notice we got natural light coming in up here as well. There's a window over here. There's one on the same side here, and there are bigger windows over there. Now, looking here can present a glare problem, especially if you're looking forward here the whole time. So we'd look at some kind of blinds that we could make adjustable so that when the focus is there, we can adjust the blinds and have the glare reduced. Yeah, there will be lighting in here that's other than natural lighting. We don't have it shown here, but there'll be something that we'll put in there. We're talking to the AV people about that as well.
So when you're looking at that podium,
yes.
You're facing to the west, right?
If you're looking this way, you're facing north.
No. You're facing west.
Excuse me.
Think about
You sure it's west? The architect's right. It's west. Yes.
We won't have to worry about.
You won't have sunlight coming through in the west. Yeah. Eric.
Have you looked at electric windows?
We're going to look at all of the window treatments and see.
It's the window itself. It actually can go all day.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
It's cost.
We're just, all of this is going to be a factor of what we can afford. Trust me. Back to this. Don't you like the way this zooms in and out? Kind of like a roller coaster? This is what it would look like from the street. Okay? So this is a south elevation. We took the tree out of the picture, but the tree will be there. We're thinking that the dry stacked stone veneer is what you will see along the bottom here. So this would be a stone look here and here. Okay? And then this would be vertical, what's called hardy board siding, that is wood look, wood texture, that's not real wood. And that's what would be here, and here, and here, and here. And then we're looking at glue laminate truss and columns. So you go back here, and in terms of the wood that's around there, and some of the woods that's here, all of the wood, that's going to be that glue laminate right there. And then this area here would be a contrast shake hardy board siding with an accent color. So it would give us different coloration, okay? Here's what it would look like from the north. So here is the courtyard around the living room, worship center here, classroom ring here. There's the garage door into the classrooms. And this is the patio. You'll see that here more clearly in just a minute. This is what it would look like from the west side. So you were asking about, yes, this is where the podium is. Those are the two windows as you're looking west in the worship center. You're looking
east that way.
If you're standing out.
Oh, you're looking east. Yeah, this way you're looking east. Yeah, I got you. Okay. And then this is the east elevation. So this is the classroom wing. This is the door that's out into the parking lot, and the covered parking there on the front. Here's the north side courtyard. So there's the living room again. And this would be, we don't know that it's going to be that kind of a stone set or what it's going to be, but some kind of a courtyard. We have a little bit of covering there around a fireplace here. And so this could be set up for an outdoor service, could be set up for an outdoor wedding currently. It's not covered in phase one, so it'd have to be nice weather, but it could be the kind of thing that we'd say, if inclement weather, you move inside for the wedding. Okay? And once again, back to the exterior, this is the south side. There's our tree. And there's a circular driveway, main entrance. Yep, I did an east side view. We'll run it back for you. East elevation's there. Parking lot out here, door into the classroom wing. This is the classroom side. Okay?
Is the parking right up against the south side right there, the last image you showed?
Parking doesn't come right up to the building, does it, Collie?
It's close. There's some handicapped parking there as well.
Yeah.
We're about to show the future expansion. You'll see it.
So you'll be able to see it. So here's what we've done in terms of saying, what if we grow? Now listen, we're not presuming, we're not planning. My wife says to me, I can't imagine. I say, I can't either. So you know what? But we just want to be wise. If we were going to expand the worship center, we would just take this wall and we'd move everything 20 feet this way. If you move everything 20 feet this way, you take the existing stuff and just push it back, expand the structure, add a new west wall, remove the current west wall, reuse the existing stage, baptistry, music platform, communion tables. You can just use all of that again. You can add about 250 worship seats for every 20 feet of expansion you do. Okay? Phase two, we would cover the existing courtyard with some kind of either lattice cover or some kind of sun cover. I don't know whether it would be fully covered or convertibly covered, so where you could roll something over it, but it would give cover and maybe expand the patio in phase two as well. And then you can add 4 typical classrooms that direction. So if you needed to expand and add classroom space, you could do that.
In the expansion, but you're not allowing for more restrooms.
Good question. Yeah, Collie? Collie says he will build you more restrooms. Yeah. We'll figure out. Uh-huh. So the question of how far from that, here's exactly what you were asking. He said, how far, if you expand that out, how far to your boundary line? Still plenty of space. Okay?
And more parking as well.
And thank you for teeing that up so beautifully. This would add expanded parking, so we'd probably build a second road out to here. So you could come in and you could expand parking lot by 50 spots with this, or you can put the church cemetery. Either that or it's condos for elders. We're just not sure exactly how that's going to get utilized. Paintball, golf course, that's right. And that gets us through. Any other questions about what you've seen up here? Yes.
I have a question. You mentioned the gymnasium, but would there be any outdoor play area for the
Yeah, we're looking at having some kind of, here's the deal on that, is there are liability issues. If you put swing sets on your property and you don't have somebody come around and tighten the bolts on your swing set every week, you can be liable if something happens on your swing set. So we've got to look into what kind of play area can we put that would be green space area or something for kids that's manageable, maybe fenced in, but would allow out the side there for kids to go. Mud hole works, yeah, that's right. Cardboard boxes that they can make into, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, will the youth use the classroom and not have a permanent?
Yeah, the youth will use